Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So in today's episode, I would like to talk about self-directed learning and why is it important. But before we go into the why, let's have a quick understanding of the definition of self-directed learning. So according to Gibbons, self-directed learning means that a learner initiates personally challenging activities and develops the knowledge and skills to overcome those challenging activities which he or she has initiated successfully. So as we can see from this chart over here by Gibbons as well, self-directed learning is a spectrum which can range from incidental self-directed learning to fully fledged self-directed learning. So under the incidental self-directed learning category, learning is usually spontaneous, unplanned, and unstructured. It can be very teacher-directed or teacher-initiated in the learning and under such conditions, the ownership of learning by the learner is usually quite low, which usually results in them not picking up the skills and competencies to manage and monitor their own learning. And when that happens, generally students will not be able to transfer their learning from the classroom situation or from a spontaneous situation to other areas in his or her life. However, under full-fledged self-directed learning, a learner usually is highly motivated already, and therefore he or she takes ownership in their own learning by identifying their personal learning goals. And when they have identified their personal learning goals, generally they also pick up the skills and the competencies to plan their own learning, to manage their own learning, and to be able to think more critically during the learning process itself. And such skills and competencies picked up by students who are very self-directed gives them a better opportunity to transfer and extend their learning beyond their classroom situation. Okay, now that we have settled the definition of self-directed learning, which is the what of self-directed learning, let's move on to the reason why is self-directed learning important for our learners. Why is it important for us to develop our learners to be more self-directed in their learning? As I mentioned in my previous slide, when a person is self-directed in his or her own learning, it would mean that the person generally has intrinsic motivation to learn. And when a person is intrinsically motivated to learn, to me, the person has independence and autonomy to chart his or her own learning. The person will also feel that the purpose of learning is for improvement towards mastering a skill or a knowledge which he or she is learning. And finally, there is opportunity for the person to work with others during the learning process itself, which means that there are opportunities for the learner to collaborate with people when he or she is learning. This is highly related to the self-determination theory by Dacey and Ryan, which they state that in order for a person to enjoy doing something, to be intrinsically motivated, the person has to have autonomy, competence, and relatedness during the learning process or during the work process. And therefore, to me, when a person has the ability to show autonomy, show competence, and be able to relate to others during the work process or the learning process, it gives a person purpose in life, which therefore creates intrinsic motivation because the person enjoys better what he or she is doing. So if we look at self-directed learning being linked to intrinsic motivation because a person innately enjoys having autonomy, competence, and relatedness during the learning process, we can safely say that self-directed learning is a basic human need. And it would be a tragedy if one cannot uh, act on his own, but is always acted upon by others. And in the long run, if a person is always being told what to do, I think it uh, destroys the person's identity as a human being, which results in the deterioration of the well-being of a person. So, quoting my friend Francis Tang, who shared that to be self-directed is to be human, I truly feel that it is very important that we develop the joy of learning for our students. And one of the ways to do that is to help them to be more self-directed in their learning by giving them the opportunity to show independence, to show their competence, and be able to collaborate and work with others during the learning process itself. Okay, now that we have gone through the what and the why for self-directed learning, I believe that everyone wants to know a little bit on how we can go about developing self-directed learning in our students. So first and foremost, I believe that students and teachers must believe in growth. But growth in what? Is it simply just growth in getting more knowledge or facts into our brains, or getting our learners to pass test after test, exams after exams? I don't think so. I think the growth should come in the development of the competencies and skills for learning, as well as the self-belief, self-confidence, and self-efficacy for learning itself. Because I think these are factors that helps a person to enjoy learning, and therefore will help a person to want to continue learning in the longer run. Second, I also believe that students and teachers must believe in making mistakes to help them grow. Why? Because if we see mistakes as something that limits our opportunity to growth, by seeing it as us being stupid, incapable, or incompetent, then we are creating a self-fulfilling prophecy that we will not be able to improve. So, in order for that not to happen, we must see mistakes as a great opportunity for us to help us understand where we have gone wrong, so that we can actually make that improvement to improve and therefore grow. And when that happens, learning takes place. So, the second point, whereby seeing mistakes as opportunities for growth, is really very important. Thirdly, I also believe in creating a safe environment for our students to grow. Why is that so? For example, if I want to grow an apple seed into an apple tree, and if I were to plant the apple seed into soil that is unfertile and dry, it will be impossible for the seed to germinate and grow into an apple tree. Likewise, for our students, in order for them to grow in their competencies for learning, as well as their confidence for learning, we need to create an environment that is fertile for them to grow. So how can we go about doing that? Firstly, students and teachers need to help one another out during the learning process itself by constantly affirming the effort during the learning, giving positive affirmation during learning as long as the learner shows effort. Next, there has to be boundaries for learning, because if the learners don't feel safe, they feel that they might be harmed emotionally or physically during the lesson, then there will be very little possibility for the growth that we want to take place. And lastly, there has to be enforcement of consequences for the flouting of boundaries. because if there are no consequences when boundaries are being flouted, then there's no point even to have the boundaries at all. Uh, so consequences must follow the flouting of boundaries. But of course, we need to help the students learn from making the mistake of flouting boundaries so that they understand that the boundaries, which is the rules and regulations and routines in the lessons, are for the purpose of helping them to grow in their confidence in learning as well as the competencies for learning. Finally, the learning stakes during the lesson must not be too high. Otherwise, the learners will be afraid to make mistakes and learn to the test or learn to simply just memorize the correct answers and regurgitate the correct answers, which again will limit the potential for them to develop continuous learning because they are not picking up, they will not be able to pick up the competencies and the skills to learn, and therefore also the confidence of learning itself as well. Basically, that's about all I have to share. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. And for the next episode on self directed learning, I will delve deeper into how we can create scaffolds to help students move from incidental self directed learners to become more full fledged self directed learners itself. So, if you like today's episode, to give a like and share and subscribe so that more teachers can benefit. And I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.